I never made it, but I know what it takes. I'm motivated by a mix of emotion.
And okay, so let us begin by talking about the test yesterday. So, a lot of you have been querying about the first question, which is the distinct element and then sorting it, right? Yes, so there are a lot of ways in which you could have, approached that particular problem. But so there are a lot of, we are not going to actually discuss that particular question, but we are going to look into different aspects and what are the different ways in which you could have gotten wrong answers or maybe partially accepted answers, right? So uh, so a lot of you said that what we did was that we first sorted the array and then we found out distinct elements. Okay, so this was the actual approach that some of you followed. Now, sorting first isn't a good solution here. Why? Because it might be possible that uh, there are, let us say, no distinct elements in your array, the input array. And yes, so that is what I'm discussing, Isha. How are you going to resolve this particular problem? So yes, so the first thing here is that if you are saying that you sorted first and then you found out the distinct element, it is not going to help because you had to first find out the distinct elements and then sort those distinct elements, right? So it might be possible that in the given array, you do not actually have any distinct elements. So you do not need to run sorting and it is going to work in order of n, in which you are going to, let us say, find out distinct elements. So this is the, yes, you could, you are saying you could use count version. Yes, you could use count array as well. You could have used sets as well if you wanted. And now, so when we talk about sorting, there are many sorting algorithms that you could have used. So depending on what kind of sorting algorithm you used, you're going to get that kind of time complexity. So as you might already know that selection sort, insertion sort, bubble sort, these require order of n square time. And those algorithms like merge sort, which is actually going to require some extra space as well, but quick sort, these two actually require order of n log n time, right? So yes, so these are actually the different ways. Now, for this particular question, we are going to actually discuss how it could be done in one of those classes where we are going to discuss sorting uh, specifically. So for now, these are the different edge cases, you may say, which you should keep in mind while you were solving those. So your answers would be um, so finding out distinct elements could be done using count array. When you are simply inputting the elements, you also create a count array at that particular time. And later on in the count array, find out the all the distinct elements. That is wherever you have the frequency of 1. Okay. So but uh, there are different cases. Now in count array, if say your range is very large, then count array will also require a lot of time. But if it is small, then it is going to work. Okay, so you did sorting at towards the end. That is also correct. But sorting, what sorting algorithm did you use? So that is also going to depend on the type of sorting algorithm and how much time it is going to take. So there's this another thing that you should always keep in mind. So all of those questions which you find to be very easy, you think these questions require very simple logic. Yes, they require very simple logic, but in those case, whenever you are attempting the test online, some of the test cases are going to be, let us say, stuck on TLE, which is time limit exceeded error. Okay. So yes, so these are certain things that you have to keep in mind. With that, and knowing that we are going to discuss this particular question later on when we look at sorting and look at how this will be resolved. So bubble sort isn't going to help. It requires n square time depending upon what it um, depending upon the number of elements it has. But okay, for now, let us just continue looking at matrices, and then we are going to look into some of coding questions as well. We are going to discuss their logics, and before starting with those coding questions, let us first go through and review what we looked into previously. That is in yesterday's lecture. So we looked into a lot of theoretical part for two-dimensional arrays. So, okay, so we are going to, yes, we are going to look at the pseudocode later on whenever we are going to discuss sorting. We are going to keep this question in mind. We can use set as well. Why? So, Naman, you do not actually require the minimum and the maximum index of the count array. We are not looking at the minimum and the maximum index. Rather, we are looking at that particular element, which is, let us say, occurring at, at any particular index where you have distinct elements, which means at any particular index where you have the value of 1. Okay, so we are, yes, so we are going to go ahead with two-dimensional arrays, and I'm going to look at, show you what all we looked at. So yes, let us begin. So we looked into two-dimensional arrays and how they are actually represented. So when we say that two-dimensional arrays, let me just change the color here. Yes, so we say this is how two-dimensional arrays are represented. Now you actually see them in the matrix form, but in the memory they are not in the same matrix form. They are actually stored in a linear form. And so how do we declare a two-dimensional array? We say that the requirement to know a particular matrix is to know how many number of columns and number of rows it has, right? So you see number of so the order of the matrix is actually defined by the number of rows and the number of columns that you have there. Okay, so whenever you are declaring a two-dimensional array, you say that I'm going to describe the data type, which is, let us say, what kind of elements the matrix is going to store. And next we have the name of the matrix along with the number of rows and the number of columns. So this type of declaration is a static declaration wherein you are predefining, or the number of rows and the number of columns are actually fixed, right? So this is how you actually declare a two-dimensional array. Now, when you come to the initialization part of a matrix, you say that, let us say I want to initialize during the code writing part, wherein you could actually use this format, this particular format, in order to initialize your matrix. So for each row, you mention the elements in each row inside these curly braces, and finally enclose the complete matrix into another curly brace. Okay, so this all of the elements here are separated by commas, including all of the rows that are separated by commas. Okay, and now, so if suppose you want to take input and store the elements into the matrix, for that you will have to use nested loops. So you start the loops from, let us say, 0, go on up till the row number, and similarly the inner loop is going to start from 0, go on up till the uh, last column number, and then you store the elements using the scanf function. So this part is very simple. You have already known it since a long time. Let us move ahead. So now let us look at the number of elements. So the number of elements in any particular matrix can be defined by the number of rows and the number of columns it has, right? So another simple thing. Then we looked into row major and column major. So what is actually row major and what is column major? So we say that in a way in which the matrix elements are actually accessed or they are stored, it is known as the row major or the column major format. So in row major format, the elements are stored in respective of the rows. So you first consider the first row, store it in the memory. So this is the actual representation of a matrix in the memory, which is in a linear form, not like this. So you pick up the first row, store its elements, then the second row, store its elements, and so on and so forth. Similarly, you do for column major as well. Okay, so for column major, you pick up columns, the columns one by one. Now we say that C programming language uses row major format, and it is because it is a bit efficient as compared to the column major format. Row major format is also known as TV scanning format. So these were the basic points that we covered previously. Then we looked into the address calculation part in two-dimensional arrays. So for address calculation part of two-dimensional arrays, we said that, say suppose you have this particular matrix which is which has a total number of 5 rows and total number of 10 columns, and now you want to find out the address of this element A10. So for that you will have to see how many elements you want to skip and to which row do you want to jump to. So we simply say that address of A of 10 will be equivalent to, so we always start off by writing and adding the base address or the starting address of the matrix, and then we add to it the number of elements and its size multiplied by the size of each element and the row you want to go to. So simply using these, we designed and came out with this generalized formula, which is MA, that is the base address, plus N into 4. 4 is here because we are currently considering an integer array, an integer matrix. And if we had, let us say, a character matrix, then this size would have changed to, okay, so I have written something wrong here. Instead of this 4, you're going to have 1 here if you want to go to the same position. Okay, so we say that N into 1, 1 because the size of character is 1, and to the position where you want to go to, which is, let us say, index I, is also 1. So you're mentioning 1 here. And with J, you do J into 1. 1 here again because the size of the character is 1. Okay, so this is basically the generalized formula. Depending upon the type of the matrix you have, you can change this data type value. Okay, so yes, this was about address calculation part. Let us, up till now, if you have any doubts, then you can start posting your queries in the group. Otherwise, let us begin with dynamic memory allocation and quickly go through the 2 methods that we looked into. And then finally, we are going to start. Any doubts up till now, up till the address calculation part of two-dimensional arrays? Okay, no. Okay, so let us move ahead. So we are going to talk about dynamic memory allocation of a two-dimensional array. So we simply say that again, like we did earlier using the malloc function, we are going to require a pointer which is of integer type since we want to have since we want to allocate memory for a integer matrix. So here we take up a integer pointer and we say that int star, so this is for the typecasting part that you already know, malloc size of int into the number of rows multiplied by the number of columns. Now as you already know that the total number of elements in the matrix are equivalent to the number of rows multiplied by the number of columns. So this part R into C actually comprises of the total number of elements that you want to have in your matrix so that malloc can actually have that much of memory allocated for these many elements, right? So you simply use this function malloc. It is going to return a pointer which is going to be typecasted to int type and then stored inside a. Now a is going to contain the address of the starting, basically the starting address of the memory that has been allocated for your matrix in the heap, right? So you say that this now there are two facts that are clear to us. The first is that in the memory, the way in which you have the matrix stored is in the linear form. So we represent this particular matrix here like this. And the second fact is that whenever you are going to add an integer, so this is about pointer arithmetic. So whenever you add a integer to the pointer, it is going to result to this formula that we have written, which is pointer plus integer into data type of that size. So if you do pointer plus 1, it is automatically going to jump to that particular location where you will have the address of the next element. Why? Because the pointer, so the compiler automatically understands that this is a integer matrix and it is going to itself multiply 4 to the integer. So say if your address here is, let us say 2000. So whenever you do 2000 plus 1, this address plus 1, it is going to go to 2004. Because the compiler will automatically understand that the next element, since this element that is stored here is an integer element, so the next element will be stored at this particular position, which is after 4 bytes. After 4 bytes, because each integer element requires 4 bytes of memory. Okay, so we say now, say if you have allocated memory to your matrix using this particular method, how can you access the elements here? So whenever you want to access a particular element, this is how you write it. So the generalized formula here is this one, which is you write a plus I into the column number that you want to go to plus j. I and j are actually the indexes which you want to go to, and column here again stands for the total number of columns that you have in your matrix. Okay, so now if you have total number of columns is equivalent to this, this part actually comes out to be the formula that we use for address calculation. And now since you're putting a star ahead of this, you are saying that I want to find out the value at that particular address, right? And we considered examples here as well. So these are the two different examples that we considered here, simply to find out which element it is going to refer to in the matrix. Right, let us now look into the second method. For the second method, we said that this time we are going to have, let us say, an array of pointers. So now what I'm saying here is that I am going to say I want to allocate memory for a 3x3 matrix, say for example. So I am saying that the first 3 here, which is the total number of rows, is going to store the address of a one-dimensional array of this size, which is the number of columns. The size here of each one-dimensional array will be equivalent to the size of the number of columns. Okay, so you say for each of these arrays, so what kind of array is this? This is an integer pointer type array. And you say for I is equal to 0, I less than the row number. Now, since you want to have three one-dimensional arrays, so imagine it in this way, that we are going to have three one-dimensional arrays since you have three rows. Say, suppose if you had 5 rows, 5 into 4, 5 cross 4 matrix, so you are going to have number of rows as 5, and for each row you are going to have a size of one-dimensional array. First of all, you're going to have 5 one-dimensional arrays, and those one-dimensional arrays are going to have a size of 4 to store the 4 elements. Okay, so for these, so once you have this pointer array and you know that ARR of 0 is pointing to the first one-dimensional array. So for the first one-dimensional array, you have dynamically allocated some memory, right? You are dynamically allocating some memory, and that memory is equivalent to, as I said, number of columns. So the number of columns will be equivalent to the number of elements that you're going to have in each row, right? So this is another simple method how you can do it, but since it is a bit complex when you refer to the elements, so you simply say that I don't really require this. Okay, so is this part clear? Did you understand how this is happening? How can you actually imagine how this is looking like in the memory? And then whenever you want to, let us say, access any particular element, so you say that these are the expressions which are equivalent to ARR of I, J. So which is ARR plus I, and then you mention a star here. Now, as I said, the compiler will automatically understand to which position it has to go to when you add an integer to a pointer. So when you add ARR plus I here, it knows that the next element in this particular one-dimensional array will be at this particular position, which is the next one-dimensional array. Okay, so it automatically jumps from here to here and then actually jumps in the same one-dimensional array when you add j. Okay, so if all of this is clear, let us then move ahead and look into some of the coding problems today. Okay, shall we move ahead, everyone? Okay, so we have this. This is actually the 5th lecture for the bootcamp. Let us start off by talking about matrix multiplication. So we are first going to look into some of the basic things like matrix multiplication, and then we are going to move ahead and look into certain questions. And so we have today, as well as we are going to have class tomorrow. In tomorrow's class as well, we are going to look into certain questions from matrices as well. So how many of you were able to attempt the other question, which is matrix rotation? Let me just post in another poll here. And I want to know how many of you understand matrix rotation. Do you know the law? Okay, so since okay, good. A lot of you are saying that you could attempt matrix rotation successfully. That's great. So I'm asking you this because it has been a lot of times that I have discussed matrix rotation, even for uh, those who were with me as a part of CEC classes of third semester. We've discussed matrix rotation. We've discussed matrix rotation as a part of the Adobe preparation classes as well. Yes. Okay. But can't get pi, the outer loop is running to n by 2. Okay. Okay, so since a lot of you are also saying that you do not know about it, it is fine. We can. Okay, so then we will again look into matrix rotation once. So let us, if we have time, we'll do it today. Otherwise, we'll do it tomorrow. Okay. So yes, let us begin with understanding matrix multiplication today. Okay, so you might have attempted matrix multiplication a lot of times as a part of, let us say, a mathematics question, or even as a programming question. So let us just quickly look at its implementation part and what is the logic behind it and how can you do it. And then we are going to look into another method which is for matrix multiplication only, but it is actually more efficient. So yes, so say for example that you have been given two matrices, and let me write this down. So the example we are going to take, let us say, is a basic one. Let us say 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, 2. Okay, so you have these two matrices here. What is the order of the first matrix? A. So the order of this matrix is 2 cross 3. You have a 2 cross 3 matrix here, and this matrix that you have here has 3 cross 2 as its order. Okay, so now once you have the size, so what is, can anyone tell me what is the one of those mandatory conditions which need to be satisfied before you start with matrix multiplication, without which you cannot actually perform matrix multiplication? What is that condition? Yes, so if the number of columns in the first matrix is equivalent to the number of rows in the second matrix, only then you will be able to perform matrix multiplication. Otherwise, you cannot, right? So you say that the number of columns in, let us say, A here should be equivalent to number of rows in B. Right. So this is one of those conditions which mandatorily needs to be satisfied before you start off with matrix multiplication. So how do you do it? So say if I write down these matrices here, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1 and 2. So if you do this, and now say you want to perform matrix multiplication, so how do you do it? You pick up the first row and multiply it with the corresponding elements in the first column of the second matrix, right? So uh, so how do you do it? So you simply take up again, you simply pick up the elements of the first row of the first matrix and multiply the corresponding elements with the elements of the first column of the second matrix, right? So how do you do it? 1 multiplied by 7, let me write this complete expression. You add to it 2 multiplied by 9, and then you add to it 3 multiplied by 1, right? So this expression, whatever this expression evaluates to, is going to result to the first element that you're going to have in your resultant matrix. And what will be the order of the resultant matrix? Can anyone tell me? So so what, let us also continue and write down what will be the rest of the elements. So once you multiply the first row with the first column, the next element, that is this element here, can be found out by multiplying this particular row with the next column. So you say 1 into 8 plus 2 into 10 plus 3 into 2, right? And similarly, you're going to have the rest of the elements. 45 plus 6, and here you will have 32 plus 50 plus 12, right? So the order of the resultant matrix is going to be equal to the number of rows in the first column, the first matrix, and the number of columns in the second matrix, which is 2 cross 2. So the final resultant matrix here will be of this order, and this is how you actually calculate the each element in the resultant matrix after you multiply the two matrices, right? So this is simple matrix multiplication. Now whenever we want to let us say multiply these matrices together, so now what are the different things that you need to keep a track of? So whenever you are writing down the code, you will require variables. Now since these are matrices, and you will have to for accessing or going through each row or each column, you will have to keep a track of certain elements. So for those elements you will need to have a loop variable, right? Since you are going to consider running a loop, you will require some loop variable. So let us say, for example, for this particular case, if we say that, let us say, first, since I am going to pick up the first row of this first matrix while multiplying, so I will have to keep a track of the row number also. So you say, let us say I am going to represent the row number of the first matrix by I, and I'm going to keep a track of the column as well for the second matrix. So for that we say that column of the second matrix, let us say I'm going to have it using this. And let us say we require another variable which is going to keep a track of that particular column, which is going to be, so we say here, let me just first write down the matrix elements with respect to their indexes so that you can understand. So we say this is element 0, 0, this is 0, 1. We are considering the example of these two matrices only. So we say 0, 2, 1, 0, 1, 1, and 1, 2 for the first matrix. And for the second matrix, which you will have 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, 1, 1, 2, 0, and 2, 1, right? Like this. So now you see here, when you're multiplying this particular row with this column, the first thing that you will have to keep in mind here is the row of the first matrix. So you are going to pick up the first row of the first matrix, multiply it with the first column here, and then for the next element you have to multiply it with the second column also. So for that you have this loop variable I. Now for the column of the second matrix, now since you know that every time you're going to pick up this first column and then the second column here in this matrix, you will have this variable j. And now if you see here, this, so let me just do this with some other color. So you will have to keep a track of this as well. So here you have 0, 1, 2, you see, and when you're multiplying it with this column, you have 0, 1, 2, right? So K here is going to keep a track of this. So K will be keeping a track of column of first matrix, and row of second matrix, right? So is everyone able to understand this? Yes. Has everyone been able to understand this? The different loop variables that we are considering? Okay, good. So let us move ahead then. Okay, so we now know what are the different loop variables we are going to require. So simply if we, let us say, write down a pseudo code for this matrix multiplication, what will it be? So we say that the first loop, which is for the number of rows in the first matrix, is going to run like this. So we say for, okay, just yes. So if I say for I is equal to 0 to, so where for so let us also since we are going to be writing down the generalized form, we have already considered I, J, and K here. So let us also consider the generalized form for the order of the matrix. So let us say if the first matrix has the order of M cross N, and the second matrix has the order of, let us say, P cross Q, right? Here N is equal to P, and only if this condition is true, we are going to be able to uh, move ahead with the matrix multiplication. So let us say if we say I is going to be the row of the first matrix, which is the maximum number of rows will be m. So you're going to go up till less than m, sorry. So you say I less than m, and for the inner loop where you're going to consider the column of the second matrix, you say for j is equal to 0 to j less than q, right? Q is going to be the column, total number of columns in the second matrix, right? And then finally the innermost loop, which is going to be for variable k, which is going to, let us say, start from 0 to k less than p or m, any of these. So like this, you go ahead and simply you say that for performing the product part, we are going to multiply the elements from A and B and then add it to the current product that you have. That is what you're doing here, right? First, you're finding out the current product, then adding it to the element product of the next two elements, then again adding it to the product of the next two elements, right? Similarly, so you do, let us say you have a product matrix and you do plus is equal to, let us say, A of ik multiplied by B of kj. Now, before, so before this here, you will have to, sorry. So before this here, you will have to initialize your product matrix at index ij with the value of 0, right? And then later, since you keep on adding to this particular position the multiplication or the product of the two of those elements, so you will have to first initialize it to 0. So you simply do this. Now this particular part of matrix multiplication you have had done a lot of times and you know the logic very well. So we are not going to spend much time here, but we are going to understand how can we actually make this part efficient and if it is possible to make this efficient or not. Okay, so if is this up till here, is everything clear to you? Let us move ahead and continue with talking about the time complexity of this particular approach for matrix multiplication. Okay. Okay. So can anyone tell me what will be the time complexity of this particular approach for matrix multiplication? We are using nested loops here and we have 3 loops. So what is the time complexity? Okay, so you want me to repeat. Okay, let me just move ahead. and quickly repeat this part. So we see here we considered the three variables that we are going to keep a track of while we are actually multiplying the elements from the two matrices. So we say that we need to keep a track of the row number of the first matrix, the column number of the second matrix, and the one which is column of the first matrix and the row of the second matrix, right? So for that, we choose three different variables, and let us say if we generalize the order of the two matrices, which is M cross N is the order of the first matrix and P cross Q is the order of the second matrix, where N is equal to P, then in that case you simply say that I am going to have these three loops here like this, and before I move ahead with the third loop, I'm going to say that I will need to initialize the product matrix. I'm going to consider a separate matrix in order to store the result, right? I will require a product matrix to store the result, and the order of that particular matrix is in this case going to be equal to 2 cross 2. So it is going to have an order of 2, and I say that I'm going to initialize each of its value to 0 before I store an element, and simply perform the same operations that we see here that we have performed. So inside this loop, this inner loop is going to run these many times here, the number of times you actually product for getting the resultant of each particular element, and you simply multiply the two elements from these indexes and store their product, add their product to the previous product that you had, and simply store it at prod ij. Okay, so now when we talk about the time complexity of this particular solution, you say the time complexity here will be m into q into p, or m into q into n, right? Now this, so if for a generalized way, if whenever we want to, let us say tell about the time complexity of any particular solution, if say suppose this both of these were going to be square matrices, then in case of square matrices all of the orders will be same. So if this has a order of 3 cross 3, this also has an order of 3 cross 3. So n is n or m or q, whatever you have, all of these values are going to be equivalent to 3 in that case. So you say that the time complexity is going to be equivalent to n cube. Order of n cube, right? We are here talking of rectangular matrices, but in case you had square matrices, since we always write time complexity in that form, we say order of n cube. Okay. So yes, so a lot of you have given those answers only, correct? Okay, so yes, so now you see the order or the time complexity here is order of n cube. Now there is this other way, now let me, before I start with the other method of matrix multiplication, let me tell you that it is not practically used. So we are not going to go into too much detail about it. The only information and the only knowledge of it existing and how it works should be something that you should know. And otherwise, we don't actually require that. Okay. So yes, let us move ahead with that. The other, let me change the color as well. So the other method that you have for matrix multiplication is the Strassen's method. You call it Strassen's. The spelling is this: Strassen's matrix multiplication. Okay, so whenever you're talking about the space complexity in the previous solution, we say that the space complexity is going to be equivalent to the size of the product matrix. Okay, so in this case, if you consider the size of the product matrix is going to be order of n square. So order of n square is going to be the space complexity. Okay, but we are not much concerned about the space complexity, since we are going to discuss another method which uh, takes up less time complexity as compared to this particular method. Okay, so what is this particular method here? So the first thing here is that this particular method of matrix multiplication uses the divide and conquer approach. So do you know what is divide and conquer approach? Okay, so let me just quickly give you a review of what these are. So whenever you're going to study about algorithms, the different type of algorithms that you're going to have. Just give me a moment, everyone. Okay, so yes, let us continue. So yes, a lot of you, I think, know what that is, but still, let us just review what that is. So we say that in for any particular algorithm, the way it is taking over the solution is going to define its approach. So in algorithms, whenever you're going to be studying algorithms, you're going to look at different types of approaches that an algorithm follows. So you can either have, let us say, a divide and conquer approach, there is greedy approach as well, and your other such approaches that an algorithm follows. So here, this particular approach is based on divide and conquer approach, as Shweta in the group has also mentioned that, like, you divide an array and then sort them and then merge. So this approach basically talks about dividing your problem into smaller sub problems and then finding out the solution. Okay, so that is why it has been given the name of divide and conquer, which is divide into sub problems and solve. Okay, so this is the basic agenda of divide and conquer approach. Now, whenever so and a very good example of this divide and conquer approach is also merge sort, right? So in merge sort, what happens? You simply have a very big array. Let us say you have a large array. You divide your array into smaller parts. You first sort those smaller parts. So what do you do in merge sort? You have, let us say, a very large array, and now you divide your array into smaller parts. So first you do half of these, then you go ahead and do half of these as well. Let us say like this, right? And you keep on bringing it towards the smaller problem until it has reached to only one part which cannot be further divided, right? And then you resolve that. So in merge sort, what happens? So after you are actually breaking your array into smaller parts, you first sort it. You first sort the smaller parts and then merge it, right? So that is also one of the same approaches. Now, similarly, we have this approach here for matrix multiplication. Now, as since you already know that it is going to divide your problem into sub problems, that means it is going to divide your matrix. So here in this particular case, you divide your matrix. into submatrices. You call them submatrices, and then perform an operation. Sorry. Yes. So this is the basic idea here. Since this is going to be a divide and conquer kind of approach, so we say that it is also going to divide your matrix into submatrices and then perform certain operations. Now, we are not going to look at what these operations are going to be, but let us just understand how many operations these are. So there are 7 predefined formulas. So these are predefined formulas, and there are 7 of these. So you say it, let me just write this down as well. So it uses 7 formulas to calculate the final values in the resultant product matrix. Okay. Right. So this is what this particular approach does. If you are more interested in this particular approach, you can go ahead and read about it online. But since you're going to look at it later on as well, whenever you're going to look into this algorithm subject, so not really required right now, since it is also not practically used. It is just for your information, so that you have this knowledge that we even have a method which works in less time as compared to the time for the naive approach that we have discussed earlier. Okay. So simply you should know here is that there is this matrix multiplication method which is known as Starson's method, and it actually uses divide and conquer approach. So using the divide and conquer approach, what it does is it divides your matrix into smaller sub matrices, and then it performs certain operations. And what are these operations that it performs? It has 7 predefined formulas which it uses in order to calculate the final values in your resultant product matrix. Okay. Now, the reason why we are looking at this is because we say that it is going to take up less time. So we say the time complexity for this particular approach of matrix multiplication is order of n to the power 2.8. Earlier it was order of n cube. Okay, so this is the time complexity here. Now since we know that this particular method is actually taking less time as compared to the original method for matrix multiplication, so why don't we use this particular method? So you should know the reasons behind this as well, right? So I hope everyone has understood what is happening here. We are using the divide and conquer approach, dividing the matrix into smaller submatrices, and then using 7 predefined formulas to calculate the resultant matrix. Okay. Okay, so we say that the time complexity here is order of n to the power 2.8. And why? So why this method is not actually used for practical application is, let us say, first, because these 7 formulas that you actually use, the constants that are used in these 7 formulas are very huge. First thing. The second thing is that for a typical implementation where you want to perform matrix multiplication, the approach that we previously discussed, that is the naive approach, works better. And the third thing is that since this particular approach, this approach here, in this particular matrix multiplication method, first of all, since it is using divide and conquer, it uses recursion here. And in recursion, the sub matrices that are, you know that the matrix is divided into sub matrices. So all these sub matrices actually require some extra space. So it is efficient, a bit efficient in terms of time complexity, but when we talk about the space complexity here, so you have to actually give out on something. Okay, so if you are gaining more efficiency in one part, so you will have to lose it from somewhere else, right? So you say that the sub matrices are going to require extra space, and since it is using recursion, so more extra space on the stack. Okay, so if you want, I can write down these as well, why it is not preferred for a practical application. Do you want me to write that as well? You can note it down if you want, or if you've understood, that is fine also. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. Written already. Okay, so let me just quickly repeat that again if you want to write it down. So what the first thing is that for a typical application, the naive method works better. The first point. The second point is that since this particular method uses recursion, the sub matrices are going to take up extra space. Okay, and the third thing is that the constants that are used in the 7 formulas that are used to calculate the final values are very huge. Okay, so now so before moving ahead, so this, why have I explained you this particular part? If it is not required for um, matrix multiplication, why have we discussed this particular approach if it is not practically implemented? It is because, so a lot of times in the interviews you are asked about matrix multiplication. Okay, so for those interviewers who start off with matrices, so first thing here is that in a lot of companies like Amazon and Adobe specifically, they ask you a lot of matrix questions. Okay, so these matrix questions are not only about, let us say, these simple problems that we are going to discuss, like rotation of matrix and printing a pattern. It is not only about this. There are other more complex problems which we are going to later on study, which come from the matrix part, right? So once you start off with the questions from matrix, this is one of the most common questions that is asked to you, and it, so any interviewer would want to uh, you know know more about you if you know certain things out of the box, right? So everyone knows about matrix multiplication. Everyone knows that it is going to require uh, 3 loops and it is going to take up order of n cube time. But if you have this little knowledge of something that is more efficient in terms of um, the time complexity, then it is going to be adding a lot. Okay. In class, okay, so Arushi is saying that in class it was told that time complexity is preferred when we need to choose between time and space complexity. So that actually, why would, so that actually depends upon what is more costly, right? So there are, so you cannot actually prefer in terms of, like, just by sitting here you can say that I'm going to prefer lesser time complexity as compared to lesser space complexity. You cannot say that. So that actually depends upon the scenario and depends upon the project that you are currently working on. So if in a project you are working on something which require, let us say, takes up a lot of cost in terms of the space. Okay, so if your project is going to take up a lot of cost, if you consider even a small space, then you're not going to consider a particular solution which is going to take up even small space. That totally depends upon the cost. What will be the time complexity in case of case of recursion functions? So, in what aspect are you asking about recursion functions? So, first of all, they are recursive functions. And yes, so if you're asking about recursive functions, uh, so we can look at certain recursive functions in some, let us say, later on classes and understand how to calculate their time complexity. Okay. Yes, so as I was saying that we have discussed this particular method just so that you have this knowledge that something like this exists. Okay. So whenever, let us say, for example, if you've been asked about an interviews for this particular uh, problem, which is matrix multiplication, you could go ahead and tell about the n cube method first, and then go ahead and talk about this method, which takes, let us say, takes up less time. And then if for that particular time you know what this 7 formulas are, then you can go ahead and explain that to the interviewer. Otherwise you could simply say that I know about this particular method, it consists of 7 formulas, but since it is not practically used, I do not know what those 7 formulas are, or I can go up and look into those 7 formulas later on. Okay. Okay, so Ashish Patwal, okay, so you're talking of a factorial function. Okay, so let us pick that up in some other class wherein we can discuss the how recursive functions for recursive function, how can we calculate the time complexity as well as the space complexity. It is going to require a bit more of a time. We cannot switch from this particular topic to the other one. So let us keep that for some other time. But okay, we I'll consider it and we'll discuss it some other time. Okay. Okay, so let us move ahead. We have talked about matrix multiplication and the two methods with which we can resolve it. If you have any doubts regarding these particular methods that we have discussed, then you can post your queries in the group. Otherwise, we are going to begin with another coding problem. And this coding problem is going to be printing the spiral form. Okay, so yes, everyone, shall we begin with the next question? Okay, so let us just have a break for, let us say, 5 minutes. Let us begin at 12:25 and then look at this particular question. Let us have a 5-minute break. Till then, if any one of you have any queries, you can post that in the group. Oh wow, Pratham, good morning. Okay, for the solution for the duplicacy part, we will not be able to discuss that today. Will take that up, as I said, with those lectures where we are going to look into sorting. Okay, so there are some interesting questions in the group. So the first is how much time does it take to compile a code of order of n cube complexity, 1 second, 2 second, or 6 seconds? So that completely depends upon the compiler, how long it takes, and what kind of compiler it is. You cannot previously define that if my code is going to have this much complexity, how much time it is going to take. The second question is, ma'am, can we define infinity in C or C++? So there is no definition for infinity basically. There is a definition for int max and int min that can be, that is actually defined. So it is defined in the form of macro. So you might have like you use hash defined macros, it is in that form. So you can use that for any purpose you want. But yes, Okay, so let us continue. It is already 12:25. Okay, so there is this other question as well. If we are not using any extra space in the code, so will its space complexity be order of 1 or order of 0? It is going to be order of 1. We do not have anything known as order of 0. It is order of 1. Okay, so yes, so let us move ahead with this particular question, which is printing the spiral form of a matrix. Okay, just give me a moment. Yes. What are the reasons for runtime error? So most of the times it is a syntax error that you're doing, and that is why you get a runtime error. Okay, so yes, let us continue. Okay, so we are going to talk about printing the spiral form of the matrix, and we are going to say that let us first consider an example. So say for example, we have a 4 cross 4 matrix. Let us here consider a 4 cross 4 matrix. So say for example, we have this matrix. Yes. So the spiral we want to print here is going to move ahead in this way that we move from this place here, then we go here, print the elements from here, then again here, and like this. Okay, so this is the spiral that we are considering. Okay, so let us follow the same approach in which we first consider the input that we have, then we look at what is the form of the output that we have, and then design our approach. Okay, so we have the elements that are going to be printed in this spiral form are going to start from 1, 2, 3, 4, then we have 8, 12, 16, 15, 14, 13, 9, 5, 6, 7, 11, and 10. Right? So this is our question, and this is the input that we have, and this is the output that we are expecting to get with whatever approach that we are going to apply. So is the question clear to everyone? Yes, good. So, if the question is clear to you, so what do you think the is the approach that we should follow in this case? So, like I've told you that we first look at the input and look at the output that we are getting, and then we go ahead and consider what kind of approach we can follow. So, can any one of you, um, tell me what they are thinking and how would you like to go ahead with the approach to this particular problem? Yes, so anyone and everyone who can think of anything regarding the solution of this particular question can post. Using loops is one solution. Yes, we are going to use loops, 4 to 5 loops. Okay. One outer loop and 3 inner loops. Okay. Run 4 inner loops for row, column, inside an outer loop. Yes. Oh, so looks like a lot of you have already resolved this question. Anyway, let us continue for the others who haven't. So we are going to look at a particular approach by looking at what is the output that we are expecting here. So if you see here for this particular question, we see that the first set of elements that are going to be printed are going to be in this way, which is in the first row. The next set of elements that you're printing are in the last column, right? Going downwards in the last column. And then the next set of elements are from the last row, but they are starting from the last column and going towards the first column. The same thing we had done in the first row as well. But for the first row, we started off with the first element that is from left towards the right. Here we want to go from right towards the left, right? And then again, this first row, similar to what we did here in the last column, we have the first column, and in the first column, this time we are going to move from downward to upwards, while previously we were moving from upwards to downwards, right? So we are going to consider the same thing and write down the different directions in which we want to move ahead. So the first thing that we want to print here, the first set of elements, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, are in the same row, but they are going to change the column. So now when I write down, let me also write down the indexes here for this particular matrix. Okay, so I've written down the indexes so that it is easier for us to understand what is happening. So you see we have the same row. We are moving in the same row. When we print the first 4 elements, we are moving in the same row, but we are changing the column numbers, right? So you have 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 2, and 0, 3. Here the column indexes are changing, but we are in the same row. So we say same row. And so how are these columns changing? So we say that the first column is 0, then the next column we have is 1, then 2, then 3. So they are changing in an incrementing fashion, right? So we say incrementing column numbers. Let us call them column indexes. So we are working in the same row and incrementing column indexes, right? Now, what about the next 4 elements that are next 3 elements that are printed? So we have 8, 12, and 16, and those are from the last column. So we say that we are going to have the same column this time. We're going to work in the same column this time, which is last column, column number 3. And this time we are going to change the row numbers. So you see, we have 3, 0. Then we have, sorry, not 3, 0. We have 0, 3. We have 1, 3. We have 2, 3. And we have 3, 3. So you see here, the column number remains same. The index of the column remains same. But the index of the row is changing. And how is it changing? It is incrementing. So you have 0th row, then you have first row, then you have second row and third row. So you should say incrementing row index. Okay, now for the next set of elements, next three elements, 15, 14 and 13, again we see that we have same row, right? And this time what kind of columns do we have? We have changing columns, but what is the way in which the columns are changing? It is incrementing or is it decrementing? You see, when we move from right towards the left, the column number here are decrementing. So we say decrementing column indexes. Okay, and lastly, when we have this, when we print the rest of the two elements, which is 9 and 5, let us say, we say that we are working in the same column again, and this time again, as we have the row numbers here are changing, and how are they changing? They are decrementing row index. And now if you see here, so first, once we've done this, so we have done this when we follow these 4 steps, we have done this up till this part, which is printing up till 5, right? So once we've printed up till 5, we have actually covered the outer square. If you see the outer square of the matrix, we've covered it. So this is the outer part of the matrix that we have covered. Right? Is this up till this part, has everyone understood? We've covered the outer square, right? Now the next thing that we want to do is we want to cover the inner square as well, this inner square that we have, in the same way. This inner square should be covered in the same way like we covered the outer square. So for that we are going to repeat these steps, right? We did these steps for the outer set of elements. Now we want to repeat these steps again for the inner square as well, to do the same thing, right? So for that, now up till now you might have understood, since we are actually using the same row and then incrementing the columns, next time we are incrementing the row index, then decrementing the columns and decrementing the row indexes. So we are going to require loops for this. So we consider all of these as separate loops. So let us say if we consider these as separate loops, and these are going to be 4 different loops here. So once we want to repeat all of these, we are going to require an outer loop as well. Right? Yes. So we are going to require an outer loop as well. So let us understand what that outer loop is going to be. So you say that outer loop for repeating the inner loops. And why is this outer loop required? So this outer loop is actually required to repeat it for the other squares that you have. That means that it is going to keep a track of the number of rows and columns. So you are going to require variables to keep a track of number of rows and the number of columns. Okay, so this thing basically here means that once you've covered these many rows, let us say half of these rows, you are going to be, so how many times do you want to run these here? These set of four loops are going to be here run two times because we have two rows and two columns. So this, you are going to require variables which are going to keep a track of the current row number that you are printing and the current column number that you are printing, right? So yes, is there any doubt or any query that you have in understanding this particular part? Coding this question is very easy since we already know what are the different kinds of loops that we are going to have. So the first two loops are going to be working in an incrementing manner. The rest of the two loops are going to be working in a decrementing manner, and then we are going to also have a outer loop, right? So I am not going to be writing down the pseudocode for this particular problem. You should go ahead and resolve this on your own. It isn't that difficult like it looks like. Okay, shall we move ahead, everyone? Okay, so I'm going to repeat the part after these 4 points. So once you know that you are going to print the elements in this form, so once you do these four loops, once you run these four loops, you are going to reach up till here. You are going to be able to print all of the elements up till 5. But why? But now you want to print out the rest of the elements as well. The rest of the elements mean 6, 7, 11, and 10. So for that you will have to repeat these four loops again to perform the same operation for the inner square that you can see here in green. Okay, so for that we say that you are going to require an outer loop which is going to repeat these inner loops. And what will be the condition for the outer loop? So the condition for the outer loop is going to be that you will require some certain variables which are going to keep a track of the number of rows and the number of columns that you've covered. So the number of rows that you've covered is going to keep a track of at which current row you are. Okay, and for the number of columns it is going to keep a track of the last column that you're going to print. So similarly for all of those things, so you can have variables starting from 0, let us say, and every time for every row and column that you print you can increment those variables. And so the actual condition that, let us say you have two variables a and b, first you initialize them to 0, and after these after implementing these loops you are going to increment the value of a and b to keep a track of at which particular row and which particular column you are. So if this is for row, this is for column, you are going to increment them looking at these particular loops. And after later on, the correct condition that you're going to have inside this loop, the outer loop, can be if A is less than the number of rows that you have. You can say number of rows and B should be less than the number of columns that you have. Okay, so this is about the outer loop and its condition and how it is going to work. Okay, so let us quickly look at another problem which is most often asked in terms of matrices. That is zigzag printing. We call that as zigzag printing. So there are actually two different types of zigzag printing that you can perform. The first, let us look at them with examples. So the first zigzag printing is going to be in this way, which is, let us say, you print this element like this, print the diagonal element, next diagonal like this, the next diagonal like this, then like this, and then again like this. So you see the elements that you print are going to be 1, 2, 5, 9, 6, 3, 4, 7, 10, 13. Then you have 14, 11, 8, 12, 15, and 16. So this is one way. The another zigzag printing that you can have is this one. So let us say if you have, let us consider a 3 cross 3 matrix. Okay, and now you print the first elements of the first row, like in this order from left to right. Then for the next row, you print from right to left, then again from left to right. Okay. So what will be the output that you will have in this particular case? It is 1, 2, 3, 6, 5, 4, 7, 8, and 9. Okay. So these are two different things that you will be doing as a part of your homework for today. Let me just quickly go ahead and tell you what will be the logic. So everything here, whenever you want to print any particular pattern considering a matrix, is depending upon the how you use the indexes. So if you see here for this particular for this one, for printing this particular pattern in the matrix, is have a for loop which is going to start for all rows. So depending upon the row numbers here, like this, you have the column numbers also. So if you have the row numbers which are, let us say, multiples of 2, okay, or 0, then you are going to print them from left to right. So all the even number rows are going to be printed from left to right, and all the odd number rows are going to be printed from right to left. Okay, so you're going to have, you can have two different loops for this print from right to left, that is incrementing the column numbers. So you see incrementing the column numbers 0, 1, 2, and for odd rows you're going to be decrementing the column numbers. So start from the value of n, which is your column number, last column number n, and decrement it, go towards 0. Okay, so this is the simple logic for this one. And what about this one? So in this one, you are going to consider diagonals. So the first diagonal that you are going to consider, you are going to print it from downwards to upwards. The other one from upwards to downwards. So look at how you're going to do this, right? So I've already written down how this output should be printed. It should be linearly and separated by space, all the elements. Simply find out how can you do this particular approach. For this approach, you are going to follow the same thing, which is, let us say, have all the diagonals, the first diagonals which are going to be even diagonals, they should be printed from downwards to upwards. So you are going to first look at what are the indexes that are going to be printed. So you start with 0 0, then the next one that you print is 1 0, sorry, 0 1, and the next element that you print has an index of 1 1. Okay, now again the next element that you print is 2 0. The other element that you print is 1 1. So I have written down something wrong. You have 0 0, correct, then you have 0 1, correct, then you have 1 0. This is 1 0. Then the next element that you have is 2 0. The next element that you have is 1 1. The next element that you have is 0 2. Okay, so this is again going to, you are going to find a pattern whenever you are printing these elements. So I want you to find out this pattern and code this particular problem. Okay, so if you are not able to do it, we are going to discuss that tomorrow. Anyway, we are going to discuss the logics of these two. These two problems tomorrow in tomorrow's class, and try to code this particular problem as well, which is spiral form of matrix. I'm not talking and telling you about printing the printing and trying out the matrix multiplication, because you might have done that a lot of times. So this isn't much required, but if you have time and you want to do it, then that's great. Go ahead, do this. Otherwise, this spiral form, the next is zigzag printing of diagonals, and then zigzag printing of the rows. Okay, we are going to discuss these two in the next class. So if you have doubts from any particular topic that we've discussed today, then you can post that in the group. Otherwise, thank you for today, and yes, let us meet tomorrow. I'm going to be again sending out I'm going to be sending out mails for the test links, so you can do that as well. And yes, so thank you everyone. If you have doubts or queries, I'm going to be waiting till 1. You can post in your queries on the group. Okay, so if there are no doubts, thank you everyone. Let us meet tomorrow.